The night manager at my own hotel burned my dead wife's photo and called me a junkie while pouring my heart medication down the storm drain, because I looked homeless after the airline lost my luggage, then kicked me in the ribs and dumped mop water on me before discovering I was actually David Keat, the billionaire who owned the entire hotel chain and had been letting them terrorize vulnerable guests for 3 years. After checking on my sister hotels across 3 continents for 7 days straight, I stumbled into my own hotel in Chicago to finally crash. Between the exhaustion and the donated clothes I'd been wearing since the airline lost my luggage, I looked completely homeless. That's all the night manager Lana needed to see to decide I was going to be her entertainment for the slow night. She glanced up from her computer for maybe 2 seconds before going back to scrolling, using that bored voice hotel staff use when they want you gone. "Can I help you?" When I said I needed a room, she actually laughed in my face and exchanged looks with Josiah, the security guard. My face burned while they discussed me like I wasn't even standing there. Lana asked Josiah if they should call the cops now or give me a chance to leave first, clearly enjoying herself way too much. The disgust in their eyes made my stomach drop. I stood there, exhausted and done with this whole thing while Josiah walked around the desk, getting close enough that I could smell his cologne mixing with coffee breath. He sniffed at me dramatically and gagged. "Oh goodness, he reeks like pee and failure." Before I could even process what was happening, he grabbed my collar and shoved me backward hard. I stumbled and Lana laughed from behind the desk. "Careful, you might catch something," she said, practically bouncing with glee. My back exploded in pain from an old injury and I couldn't stop the gasp that escaped. Lana immediately jumped on it, clapping her hands together. "Oh my God, the withdrawal shakes are starting," Josiah added. "I've seen this act before. They pretend to be sick while doing a fake trembling impression." When I reached for a chair to steady myself, he kicked it, sliding across the marble. The sound echoed through the empty lobby. That's when they spotted my ring finger. Lana's eyes narrowed as she pointed at the tan line. "Let me guess, your wife left because you're a pathetic hammered?" Josiah piled on, saying I probably hit her with these shaky hands. "No wonder she ran. Who could love something like this?" My chest tightened because my wife died last year and somehow they'd found the one wound that hadn't healed. They must have seen something in my face because they both closed in. I was still trying to catch my breath when my wallet fell from my pocket and scattered everywhere. Josiah planted his foot on my driver's license and ground it down. Meanwhile, Lana had already snatched up the photo of my wife. She held it up to show Josiah and I immediately reached for it, my heart racing. She yanked it away and made some crack about my wife being way out of my league. "Please, that's my wife," I said. But she just smiled and tore the photo in half right in front of me. The sound of ripping paper hit me like a punch. Those torn halves were all I had left of her. I made another desperate grab for the pieces, but Lana already had her lighter out, flicking it open and lit them, while Josiah forced my head down to watch. The ashes hit my face while she told me my wife was gone, just like my dignity. I tried to pull away, but Josiah kept his hand on my neck, pressing harder. That's when something popped in my ribs from the awkward position and I couldn't help crying out. They finally let me go and I dropped to my knees, trying to breathe through the pain and tried to get my prescription bottle. Lana was quick to notice and picked it up. "Oxy? Of course, junkie trash." I tried to stand, but the pain kept me down as she walked to the door. "Those are prescribed. I need those." I managed to get out, but she just laughed. She poured every single med down the storm drain while I watched helplessly. "Can't sell these to kids now, can you?" Lana was already on 911, describing a violent vagrant who'd threatened to unalive them. She gave a completely false description while Josiah destroyed my boarding passes and the merger documents I'd been reviewing. "Look at this trash," pretending to be important. The worst part was when Josiah found my hotel loyalty card with my name on it. He laughed and showed Lana. "David Keat? This loser thinks he's the owner?" They both cracked up while he snapped the card in half. Lana leaned in close, her breath hot against my ear. "You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." Then came the final assault. Josiah dragged me outside by my hair and threw me onto the wet concrete. Lana appeared with a mop bucket and dumped the filthy water over me. "Maybe now you'll smell better." Josiah kicked me in the ribs while I was down. "Come back and I'll put you in the hospital." Lana actually spit on me before adding, "or the morgue." They went back inside laughing, high-fiving through the glass while I lay there trying to understand how this had happened in my own hotel. Blood mixed with dirty water on the concrete while they made jokes about homeless people through the window. I laid there until Tom from the morning shift pulled up 20 minutes later and recognized me immediately despite the state I was in. He ran over yelling my name while Lana came storming out to stop him. Get away from that piece of her face went from angry to terrified when she heard him say, "Mr. Keat." She stumbled backward, processing what that name meant. Tom was already helping me sit up and calling for an ambulance. Josiah appeared in the doorway and dropped his phone when he saw Tom kneeling beside me. They both stared at me like they were seeing a ghost. The reality hit them hard. They'd just assaulted the man who owned the entire hotel chain. The man whose name was literally on their paychecks. The man whose loyalty card they'd just snapped in half while laughing. And they'd done it all on camera. They tried to help me to my feet, but it was too late. I was going to destroy them. I stayed on that cold concrete for what felt like forever, watching Tom argue with Lana through the glass doors. My ribs screamed with every shallow breath and the dirty mop water had soaked through to my skin. Tom kept gesturing at me while Lana shook her head frantically, her hands moving in wild patterns as she tried to explain something. Josiah had disappeared completely. The ambulance sirens grew louder, cutting through the early morning quiet. Tom rushed back outside, shrugging off his jacket to put under my head. His hands trembled as he checked me over, muttering apologies I didn't deserve from him. Lana burst through the doors again, her phone pressed to her ear. She paced in tight circles near the entrance, speaking rapidly to someone. Her free hand kept pulling at her hair, and even from where I lay, I could see her scanning the lobby through the windows, looking for cameras I realized, looking for evidence of what they'd done. The paramedics arrived in a blur of Navy uniforms and medical equipment. They asked questions I struggled to answer while checking my vitals. One of them frowned at my blood pressure reading and immediately started in 4. The female paramedic gently examined my ribs, and I couldn't suppress the sharp intake of breath when she found the damaged ones. Tom stayed close, filling in details when I couldn't speak. He told them about finding me on the ground, about the water, about who I was. That last part made both paramedics exchange glances before becoming even more thorough in their examination. Through the loading process, I watched Josiah reappear in the lobby. He had his phone out now too, typing furiously. His security uniform was disheveled, and he kept wiping his hands on his pants, the same hands that had grabbed my hair, that had kicked me while I was down. Inside the ambulance, the paramedic asked about my medications. I explained about the oxycodone, prescribed for my back, now dissolved in the storm drain. She made notes while securing me for transport. The pain was getting worse without the medication, radiating from my ribs through my entire torso. The hospital intake was a blur of bright lights and antiseptic smell. The triage nurse started processing my information, typing routinely until she got to my name. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. She looked at my ID again, then at me, then back at the ID. "David Keat?" she asked slowly. "From the Keat Hotels?" I nodded, too exhausted to explain. Her expression shifted. "My husband works at the Keat on Michigan Avenue, in maintenance. I've seen your photo in their break room." She became noticeably more attentive, expediting my paperwork. Within minutes, I was in a private room with a doctor examining my injuries. He was thorough, ordering x-rays and documenting every bruise, every scrape. The broken ribs were confirmed, 3 of them, he said, clean breaks that would need weeks to heal properly. My phone, miraculously still functioning despite everything, buzzed with my lawyer's callback. I explained what had happened, keeping my voice steady despite the pain. He listened without interrupting, then advised immediate documentation of everything. Photos, medical records, witness statements. He was already making calls to his team as we spoke. The doctor returned with more findings. Beyond the broken ribs, there was significant bruising across my back and sides. He photographed everything meticulously, creating a medical record that would be crucial later. When he asked about pain management, I hesitated. The memory of Lana calling me a junkie while destroying my legitimate prescription was too fresh. "I'll manage without anything strong," I told him, though my body screamed in protest. He frowned but noted my regular medications in the chart. "You'll need to contact your cardiologist about the disrupted medication schedule," he said. "Missing doses of cardiac medication can be serious." My assistant arrived while they were finishing the documentation. She carried fresh clothes and my laptop, her face pale with concern. She'd already discovered that the merger documents in my bag had been the only signed copies. Well, nothing says welcome home quite like getting mistaken for a vagrant in your own hotel and having your prescription meds turned into storm drain soup. Weeks of negotiations, destroyed by Josiah's hands. Through the hospital room window, I could see the sunrise beginning to paint the sky. Somewhere across the city, Lana and Josiah were probably still at the hotel, trying to figure out their next move. My phone showed missed calls from various department heads who'd heard something had happened. The head of HR was my first callback. I kept it simple. "Freeze Lana and Josiah's employee files immediately, but take no other action yet. There would be protocols to follow, investigations to conduct. But first, I needed to get out of this hospital bed and review that security footage." My assistant helped me change into the fresh clothes, careful of the bandages wrapped around my torso. Every movement was agony, but at least I looked human again. The donated clothes I'd been wearing went into a bag, evidence now, like everything else from this morning. The doctor returned with discharge papers and a prescription for pain medication I wasn't sure I'd fill. He stressed again about contacting my cardiologist immediately. The disrupted medication schedule was already affecting my vitals, he said. I needed to get back on schedule within 48 hours. As my assistant wheeled me toward the exit, hospital policy, despite my protest that I could walk, my phone buzzed with a text from Tom. He was still at the hotel, now dealing with the morning shift arrival. People were asking questions, he said. Lana and Josiah were still there, still in yesterday's uniforms, trying to act normal, but nothing about this morning had been normal. Nothing about what they'd done to me could be explained away. They'd targeted me because I looked vulnerable, because they thought I was beneath them. They'd taken pleasure in my humiliation, in destroying the photo of my wife, in denying me medication I legitimately needed. The parking garage felt strange after the bright hospital lights. My assistant had brought my car, but I let her drive. My hands were shaking, not from withdrawal, like Lana had mocked, but from the reality of what had happened in my own hotel, under my own watch, to me, and probably to others who'd just as vulnerable. The merger documents would need to be recreated. The meetings I'd missed would need to be rescheduled. But first, I needed that security footage. I needed to see exactly what Lana and Josiah had done, needed to have it preserved before anyone could delete or alter it. My phone rang again. The IT department, my assistant said. They controlled access to the security system. But it was barely 7 a.m., and the corporate IT wouldn't be fully staffed for another hour. The night security footage was locked behind protocols that required administrator approval. We drove through the waking city while I made more calls. My lawyer was already at his office, assembling a team. The police would need to be involved, he said. What Lana and Josiah had done wasn't just wrong, it was criminal assault. The evidence would be crucial. My ribs protested every bump in the road, each turn of the car. The missing pain medication was becoming a serious problem. But worse was the thought of that torn photo, burned to ashes, scattered on my face while they laughed. My wife's picture, the only one I'd carried, destroyed for their entertainment. By the time we reached my office, the sun was fully up. Somewhere in the city, Lana was probably texting her cousin, the labor attorney she'd mentioned to a coworker last month. Josiah was probably deleting his social media posts, the ones where he'd bragged about taking out the trash when dealing with homeless people near the hotel. They thought they'd been dealing with trash this morning. They thought they'd found an easy target, someone to humiliate without consequences. But they'd chosen wrong. They'd revealed exactly who they were and done it all on camera. My assistant helped me into my office chair, placing the laptop within easy reach. There was so much to do. Police reports to file, security footage to obtain, medical follow-ups to schedule. The broken ribs would heal. The merger documents could be recreated. But the image of them laughing while they destroyed my wife's photo would stay with me. They'd shown me their true nature in those early morning hours. Now, it was time to show them mine. Not through violence or cruelty, I wasn't like them, but through the systematic documentation of every single thing they'd done, every policy they'd violated, every law they'd broken. The security footage would tell the story. Their own actions would condemn them. And maybe, finally, the culture that had allowed them to treat vulnerable people this way would change. My phone buzzed with another text from Tom. Lana and Josiah were getting desperate, he said. They knew I had survived. They knew I was out of the hospital. They knew their time was running out. I settled deeper into my office chair, wincing as the movement sent fresh pain through my ribs. My assistant placed a glass of water on my desk and stepped back, waiting for instructions. I gestured toward the laptop and she immediately began pulling up the security system interface. The cease and desist letter arrived by courier within the hour. Lana's cousin had worked fast, crafting a document that painted her as a victim of workplace harassment and demanding 2 years severance pay. I read through the legal language while my assistant worked on accessing the security footage. The letter claimed I'd created a hostile work environment by arriving at the hotel in an intimidating manner, designed to entrap honest employees. My lawyer called back with updates. He'd already filed the police report and was coordinating with the prosecutor's office. The security footage would be crucial, he emphasized again. Without it, the case would devolve into competing narratives about what had happened in those early morning hours. The IT department finally responded to our access request. The head of security systems arrived at my office personally, laptop in hand. He connected to the hotel's server remotely, navigating through layers of authentication. I watched the screen intently as he pulled up the lobby cameras from the previous night. There it was, every moment captured in high definition. I asked him to transfer the files to a secure server immediately, with multiple backups. He nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation without needing explanation. Once alone, I opened the footage on my laptop. My hands trembled slightly as I clicked play. Watching myself enter the hotel brought back the exhaustion I'd felt. The timestamp showed 2:47 a.m. I watched Lana's dismissive glance, saw myself approach the desk, observed her laughter when I asked for a room. The video continued relentlessly. Josiah circling around the desk, the shove that sent me stumbling, their laughter as I gasped in pain. I had to pause when they found my wife's photo, even knowing what was coming. Watching Lana tear it in half made my chest constrict. The lighter flame was clearly visible as she burned the pieces, the ashes falling as Josiah held my head down. I forced myself to continue watching, the prescription bottle being emptied into the storm drain, the false 911 call, the destruction of my documents, their mockery when they found my loyalty card, the final assault outside, the mop water, the kicks, the spitting, all of it captured by multiple camera angles. My daughter's call interrupted my viewing. She'd seen something on social media about an incident at a Chicago hotel. A friend from school had forwarded a news link. I assured her I was fine, downplaying the injuries. She wasn't convinced, said she was driving down from college immediately. I tried to dissuade her, but she'd already packed her car. The head of HR arrived with personnel files. I reviewed Lana and Josiah's employment records while she waited, multiple commendations for Lana's efficiency in maintaining hotel standards. Josiah had received praise for keeping the property secure, but buried deeper were other reports, complaints that had been filed and mysteriously resolved, incidents that had been documented then seemingly forgotten. I asked for a comprehensive review of all night shift reports from the past 3 years. The HR head's expression tightened, but she nodded and left to compile the information. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Josiah had posted in online security forums about wealthy hotel owners who dressed as homeless people to entrap hard-working employees. The post was gaining traction, with other security guards sharing similar conspiracy theories about rich people testing them. My cardiologist's office called next. The disruption to my medication schedule was serious, they said. I needed to come in immediately for an EKG and new prescriptions. But first, I'd need a police report documenting the theft of my medication. The irony wasn't lost on me. I needed official documentation that my prescribed medication had been destroyed by someone who'd called me a junkie. The trip to the police station was painful. Every pothole sent shockwaves through my broken ribs. The officer taking my statement watched the security footage with increasing disbelief. He made copies of everything, assured me that charges would be filed immediately. Both assault and theft of prescription medication were serious crimes. At the cardiologist's office, I endured lectures about medication compliance while nurses ran tests. The EKG showed irregularities caused by the missed doses. My doctor prescribed emergency refills, but warned that the stress of the assault combined with the medication disruption had put strain on my heart. He recommended immediate lifestyle changes and stress reduction, an impossible prescription given the circumstances. The pharmacy visit brought its own humiliation. The pharmacist asked about the police report for the controlled substance prescription. How did Tom manage to stay there watching them all morning without them noticing? The way they're trying to act normal while knowing something's wrong must be making them so nervous. I wonder if other employees can sense the tension too. Other customers stared as I explained that my medication had been stolen and destroyed. One woman moved her child further away from me, clearly making assumptions about why someone would need a police report for pain medication. Back at the office, the HR comprehensive review had been completed. 23 documented incidents over 3 years where guests had been turned away during night shifts. The reasons varied. Inappropriate appearance, potential security risk, not meeting hotel standards. But the pattern was clear. Lana and Josiah had been systematically denying service to people they deemed unworthy. My daughter arrived while I was reviewing the reports. She took one look at me, and her face crumpled. I tried to stand to greet her, but the pain forced me back into the chair. She knelt beside me, carefully avoiding my injured side, and I saw my late wife and her concerned expression. She stayed while I made more calls. The merger partners were growing concerned about the reputational risk of the incident. Local news had picked up the story, though my name hadn't been released yet. The headline read, "Luxury Hotel Security Practices Under Scrutiny After Alleged Assault." They wanted assurances that this wouldn't affect the deal. My sister called from Miami, where she ran one of our other properties. She begged me to handle things quietly, to think of the 8,000 employees whose jobs depended on the merger going through. I promised to keep to the timeline, but wouldn't drop the criminal charges. The conversation ended with her frustrated sigh and a warning about my need for perfect justice. The investigation deepened. Tom had been written up 6 times by Lana for being too friendly with loitering individuals. Each write-up was carefully documented, creating a paper trail that showed Tom's job had been in jeopardy for showing basic human kindness. He'd been one warning away from termination. Lana's lawyer sent another letter, this time requesting my medical records. They were searching for any history of mental health treatment or substance abuse that might undermine my credibility. The strategy was clear. Paint me as an unstable rich man with a vendetta against working-class employees. The security footage review revealed more disturbing patterns. Elderly people turned away in the rain. A woman with children denied a room because her credit card was declined. A man in a wheelchair told there were no accessible rooms available when the system clearly showed vacancies. Each incident carefully documented by the same cameras that had captured my assault. My lawyer advised patience. Let them think they were winning while we built an airtight case. Their overconfidence would be useful, he said. But patience was difficult when my ribs ached with every breath and the image of my wife's photo burning played on repeat in my mind. Lana posted a video of herself volunteering at a food bank. The caption read about giving back to the community while under attack from corporate greed. Comments poured in supporting her, condemning wealthy hotel owners who didn't understand the challenges of frontline workers. She was building a narrative of persecution. The accounting department's audit revealed another layer to the story. Lana had been manipulating overtime reports for 2 years. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic reviews, but it added up to thousands of dollars. The theft was meticulously hidden, showing a pattern of deception that extended beyond her treatment of guests. I had to decide whether to reveal the financial crimes. My lawyer warned it would complicate the assault case. Juries didn't like complex victims, he said. Better to focus on the clear-cut assault and deal with the theft separately. But separating the patterns felt like letting her control the narrative. Josiah's mother suffered a mild heart attack. His family blamed me, saying the stress of my vendetta had caused her collapse. The news hit harder than expected. Both our mothers were in the same cardiac ward, both suffering because of that night's events. The security footage showed clear assault, but the human cost was spreading beyond the original crime. I missed an important merger meeting while dealing with depositions. Board members texted asking about priorities. The deal that would secure thousands of jobs was being jeopardized by my pursuit of justice for one night's humiliation. But every time I considered dropping the charges, I thought of the 23 other people who'd been turned away, who hadn't had the power to fight back. 3 corporate sponsors requested meetings about brand association concerns. The story was spreading beyond local news. Hotel industry forums discussed the incident, with opinions split between those who supported strict security measures and those who saw it as discrimination. Our stock price began showing volatility. The panic attack hit while visiting inspection. The moment I entered the lobby, my chest tightened. The marble floors, the front desk, the security guard's uniform, everything triggered memories of that night. I couldn't make it past the entrance. My assistant had to complete the inspection while I sat in the car, focusing on breathing exercises. I started sleeping in my office to avoid hotels altogether. Takeout containers accumulated as I reviewed hundreds of hours of security footage, documenting every instance of cruelty. The patterns were undeniable, but watching them took a toll. Each rejected guest, each mocking comment, each abuse of power added weight to my chest. My brother flew in from Seattle. He found me at my desk at 3 a.m., surrounded by legal documents and medical records. His intervention was gentle but firm. I was becoming obsessed, he said, just like after Anna died. This wasn't what she would have wanted. The pursuit of perfect justice was consuming me. But how could I explain that it wasn't about perfect justice? It was about the systematic cruelty I'd allowed to flourish in my hotels, the culture that said some people deserved dignity while others could be discarded. The policies I'd signed off on that created space for Lana and Josiah to become what they were. Tom's wife called my assistant. Their car tires had been slashed in what police called random vandalism. She was taking their children to stay with her mother. She couldn't raise them in this fear, she said. When I offered to relocate their entire family, she responded that my money couldn't fix what my vengeance had broken. The guilt was crushing, but I continued building the case. 47 documented incidents over 3 years. Each one a person denied basic dignity, each one a failure of the system I'd built. The evidence was overwhelming, but would a jury see past the class dynamics? Would they see a rich man crushing working-class employees who'd made one mistake? My daughter asked that question directly. She'd taken a semester off from college to support me, but doubt crept into her voice. What if the jury sympathized with Lana and Josiah? What if they saw me as entitled, seeking revenge for wounded pride? The question lingered because I didn't have a good answer. To counter Lana's narrative, I made a difficult decision. I released my complete medical records publicly, revealing the cardiac condition, the prescribed pain medication, the grief counseling after my wife's death. Every vulnerability laid bare to prevent them from controlling the story. The transparency felt like another violation, but it was necessary. The discovery that shook me most came from my own email archives. 2 years ago, an employee had complained about night shift staff being unwelcoming to certain guests. I'd forwarded it with a note calling it a personality conflict that should be resolved at the department level. I'd dismissed it without investigation, enabling the culture that led to my assault. The judge set a trial date 8 months away. My lawyer had requested an expedited hearing, but the court calendar was full. Justice delayed but not denied, he said. But 8 months felt like an eternity. 8 months for Lana to build her victim narrative. 8 months for evidence to fade. 8 months of reliving that night. Lana's financial desperation became apparent when her lawyer revealed she'd already spent $30,000 on legal fees. Her savings were depleting rapidly. Part of her genuinely believed she'd been protecting the hotel brand from dangerous people. In her mind, she was the victim of a vindictive billionaire who'd trapped her. A former employee reached out through my lawyer. They'd quit after being ordered to refuse service to an elderly man in a wheelchair. They were willing to testify about the systematic discrimination they'd witnessed. Their courage inspired others. Soon, multiple employees came forward with similar stories, each one adding weight to the pattern of abuse. The restraining order hearing brought unexpected pain. I won easily. The video evidence was undeniable. But watching Josiah learn he couldn't visit his mother in the cardiac ward felt hollow. Both our mothers lay in the same hospital, both suffering from our conflict. The victory tasted like ash. The prosecutor warned that Lana's countersuit for defamation was gaining credibility. Her volunteer work, her clean record, her narrative of being trapped by a vindictive employer, it all played well in the court of opinion. The security footage was clear, but juries were unpredictable when class dynamics were involved. I made another difficult decision. The overtime fraud evidence would remain sealed until after the criminal trial. It felt like compromising my ethics for strategic advantage, but my lawyer insisted, keep the focus on the assault, don't complicate the narrative, let their own actions convict them without muddying the waters. The hotel stock dropped 8% as institutional investors expressed concerns about leadership stability. Stock down 8% because the owner got beat up in his own lobby. That's some expensive karma for ignoring employee complaints about personality conflicts 2 years ago. Board members called emergency meetings. The merger partners demanded detailed explanations. Everything I'd built over decades was shaking because of one night's events. Because I'd looked vulnerable. Because I'd been seen as less than human. But the deeper truth was harder to face. Everything was shaking because I'd built a system that allowed cruelty to flourish. I'd created policies that prioritized property values over human dignity. I'd dismissed complaints that could have prevented this. The assault was just the visible symptom of a disease I'd cultivated through negligence. My executive team's complicity became clear during depositions. They'd known about night shift issues but hadn't escalated them. They'd seen the complaints but deemed them low priority. They'd allowed Lana and Josiah to operate with impunity because the hotel ran efficiently. Because the numbers looked good. Because it was easier to ignore the human cost. The realization that I'd built the system that created them hit harder than Josiah's kicks. Every policy, every metric, every performance review had contributed to a culture where cruelty was rewarded as long as it was efficient. Where human dignity was secondary to brand standards. Where people like me were protected while others were disposable. I implemented immediate changes across the chain. Executive approval required for any guest refusal. Mandatory recording of all shift activities. Regular reviews of night shift decisions. But policies couldn't change hearts. They couldn't undo the damage to everyone who'd been turned away over the years. The city councilman I'd called for support listened politely but declined to help publicly. A billionaire assault victim wasn't sympathetic enough for political capital. He provided contact information for victim advocacy groups but warned they might not be interested either. My wealth made me an unsympathetic victim even though the assault was real. As the investigation deepened, more evidence emerged. Josiah's text metadata showed messages sent during work hours that contradicted his timeline of events. His claim of self-defense crumbled under technical analysis. But Lana's narrative of protecting the hotel remained consistent. She truly believed she'd been doing her job. Both of us showed physical deterioration as the case progressed. My cardiac monitor readings worsened from stress. Lana's hands developed a constant tremor. We were destroying each other in pursuit of our versions of justice. The security footage showed clear assault but the human wreckage extended far beyond that night. The pattern was undeniable. The evidence was overwhelming. But justice remained uncertain. A jury would have to see past wealth and class, past narratives and counter-narratives, to find truth in security footage and testimony. They'd have to decide whether dignity was universal or conditional. Whether assault was wrong regardless of the victim's appearance. Everything hinged on 12 strangers understanding that cruelty learned could be unlearned. That systems enabling discrimination could be reformed. That justice wasn't about revenge but about preventing future victims. The footage would show what happened that night, but changing what allowed it to happen would take more than any trial could deliver. I discovered the truth during a late-night review of executive meeting minutes. My leadership team had received quarterly reports highlighting guest service concerns during night shifts. The euphemistic language masked what they'd really known. Systematic discrimination happening under our brand. They'd chosen to file these reports away rather than investigate. The knowledge settled in my chest like lead. This wasn't just about 2 rogue employees. I'd built an entire structure that enabled cruelty through willful blindness. Every executive who'd seen those reports and stayed silent was complicit. Every manager who'd prioritized efficiency over humanity had contributed. My hands moved across the keyboard, drafting new policies. Executive approval would now be required for any guest refusal. Mandatory recording of all shift activities. Random audits of night shift decisions. But even as I typed, I understood these were bandages on a wound I'd allowed to fester for years. A former night auditor contacted my lawyer. She'd quit after being ordered to turn away an elderly man in a wheelchair during a storm. Her testimony would prove the pattern extended beyond Lana and Josiah. More employees followed, each with similar stories of being forced to deny basic human dignity to vulnerable people. I sat in my home office, unable to enter any hotel without anxiety medication, and accepted what this meant. I'd created the system that produced them. Every performance metric that rewarded maintaining standards over compassion. Every policy that gave night staff unchecked power. Every dismissed complaint that signaled this behavior was acceptable. The commitment to reform came from this recognition. Regardless of the trial's outcome, I would rebuild our culture from the ground up. Not just policies, but the very values we measured and rewarded. The merger would proceed, but with new protections for both workers and guests. My IT team's analysis of Josiah's phone revealed damaging metadata. Text messages sent during his shift contradicted his timeline of events. One message to his wife, sent while he claimed to be defending himself, simply read about taking out trash. The timestamp proved he'd been lying about the sequence of events. I presented this evidence to the prosecutor without vindictiveness. The focus remained on patterns of behavior, not personal vengeance. Lana's own reports would condemn her. Dozens of entries about undesirable individuals she'd removed from the property. Her meticulous documentation became her undoing. The prosecutor's strategy became clear as more evidence accumulated. This wasn't just assault, it was a hate crime motivated by economic discrimination. The enhanced charges carried serious penalties, but more importantly, they acknowledged the systematic nature of what had happened. Multiple employees came forward after I guaranteed protection from retaliation. Night shift culture, where cruelty was normalized. Some had participated reluctantly, fearing for their jobs. Others had quit rather than comply. All had been affected by the system I'd allowed to develop. Media presence intensified outside the courthouse as the trial date approached. Reporters positioned themselves at strategic points, hoping to capture images of the billionaire assault victim or the working-class defendants. The optics were impossible to ignore. Wealth versus poverty, power versus powerlessness. The first day of trial revealed the gallery's division. Maintenance staff and day shift employees sat behind me, while night security personnel filled the rows behind Lana and Josiah. The hotel had become a house divided, with employees forced to choose sides in a conflict that exposed deeper truths about our culture. Both defendants showed physical deterioration from months of stress. Lana's hands trembled constantly now, requiring medication to control. Josiah had lost significant weight, his security uniform hanging loose on his frame. I wasn't much better. My cardiac monitor's regular beeping had become a soundtrack to my days. The prosecutor methodically presented the security footage. Jurors winced visibly when they saw my wife's photo being burned. Several looked away during the prescription medication destruction. The assault itself, captured from multiple angles, left no room for interpretation. This wasn't self-defense or protecting property. It was cruelty for entertainment. Tom's testimony proved particularly powerful. Despite concerns about his job, he took the stand and revealed Lana's 3 strikes list of employees marked for termination. His name had been on it for showing kindness to people she deemed unworthy. His pastor sat in the gallery, providing silent moral support, as Tom described the toxic environment. The judge's decision to order psychiatric evaluation for Lana came after her courtroom outburst. She'd stood suddenly during Tom's testimony, shouting about protecting society from parasites. The bailiffs restrained her while she ranted about people who didn't deserve 5-star service. Her lawyer's face showed he knew they'd lost. Audio enhancement of the security footage revealed previously inaudible comments. Josiah's words while kicking me became clear. "Stay down where you belong." The discriminatory intent was undeniable. The prosecutor played this enhanced audio 3 times, ensuring every juror heard the hatred in those words. The evidence painted a damning picture, but it also revealed my hotel's systematic failures. We'd had no meaningful oversight of night shifts, no regular review of guest refusals, No system to catch patterns of discrimination. The corporate negligence that enabled this cruelty became part of the trial record. Lana's breakdown on the stand surprised everyone. She admitted feeling powerful for the first time in her life when refusing service to undesirable people. She described the rush of authority, the satisfaction of maintaining standards. Her testimony revealed how my system had transformed a person into someone who found joy in others' humiliation. When asked to provide a victim impact statement, I struggled to articulate the lasting damage. The physical injuries had healed, but I couldn't enter hotels without medication. The image of my wife's photo burning haunted my dreams. The knowledge that this had happened to others who couldn't fight back weighed heaviest. I made a choice that surprised the prosecutor. Instead of requesting maximum sentences, I asked for mandatory empathy training and community service. Prison wouldn't teach them to see humanity in everyone. The irony of needing anxiety medication to enter your own hotels is like being allergic to your own cooking. Technically possible, but really inconvenient for business dinners. Working at homeless shelters, serving those they'd dismissed as worthless, might begin that education. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all assault charges. They recommended minimum sentences, acknowledging the defendant's lack of prior records. The foreman later told reporters they'd struggled with the class dynamics, but couldn't ignore the clear evidence of assault. The verdict created a permanent rift among hotel employees. Some felt ashamed they'd stayed silent, while others still defended Lana's actions as protecting the brand. The divide reflected deeper questions about what hospitality meant and who deserved to receive it. I implemented nationwide reforms immediately after the verdict. Every hotel would require annual training on dignity and respect. Night shifts would have increased oversight. Guest advocacy departments would review all refusals. The changes came too late for past victims, but might prevent future ones. My inability to enter hotels without anxiety medication became permanent. I ran the company from my home office, conducting virtual inspections and meetings. The merger proceeded with new policies protecting both workers and guests. The deal closed successfully, securing jobs while transforming our culture. Lana served weekends in jail while performing court-ordered service at a homeless shelter. The same people she'd once called security to remove now became those she served meals to. Reports suggested she struggled initially, but gradually began to see them as human beings, rather than threats. Josiah lost his security license after the conviction. He found work in construction, a field where his physical strength served purposes other than intimidation. His mother recovered from her heart attack, but their relationship remained strained. He'd learned consequences existed even for those who thought themselves protectors. Tom received a promotion to head our new guest advocacy department. His compassion, once seen as weakness, became the standard we measured others against. He implemented training programs based on his experiences, teaching employees to see dignity in everyone, regardless of appearance. I visited my wife's grave with my daughter on the anniversary of her death. I told her about finally seeing what she'd always tried to show me, that systems could dehumanize people, that policies could enable cruelty, that leadership meant protecting the vulnerable. My daughter held my hand as I acknowledged how much change had come too late. The torn photo remained in my wallet, scotch taped together but never quite whole. It served as a reminder that cruelty was learned, but kindness had to be actively taught. That every policy, every metric, every decision either reinforced humanity or diminished it. That true hospitality meant welcoming everyone, especially those who appeared to need it most. The reforms spread throughout the industry as other chains adopted similar policies. Not because of legal requirements, but because the trial had exposed uncomfortable truths about how hospitality workers were trained to see certain people as less deserving. The conversation shifted from maintaining standards to maintaining humanity. I never fully recovered from the trauma, but built something better from its ashes. A company culture that valued compassion over efficiency. A system that protected rather than punished vulnerability. A legacy that honored my wife's memory by ensuring no one else would be dismissed as unworthy of basic dignity. The merger succeeded beyond financial projections. Employee satisfaction increased, guest complaints decreased. The correlation was clear. When workers felt empowered to show humanity, everyone benefited. The culture that had created Lana and Josiah slowly transformed into one that created advocates like Tom. Change came through action, not words. Through policies that had teeth. Through accountability that reached from night shifts to executive suites. Through recognition that hospitality meant serving all humans with dignity, not just those who looked like they belonged. The story ended not with perfect justice, but with imperfect progress. With acknowledgement that systems could be reformed even if damage couldn't be undone. With understanding that cruelty flourished in cultures of indifference, but withered when compassion became mandatory. With proof that even those who'd been broken could help rebuild something better. Thanks for watching the video. I wonder if the owner ever stopped needing anxiety medicine to enter hotels. That torn photo staying in his wallet with tape holding it together really shows how some things can never be fully fixed. See you in the next vid.